Recover emits red and infrared light therapy based on the same science that NASA developed, all in a soft, flexible housing pad powered by a convenient, rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Say yes to science and give your dog the care it deserves with Red Recover.
I'm a big Mario Cristobal guy. I do like him a lot as a person, having known him, from back in my college days. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say Miami. I think with the ACC, the path of the ACC, I think they've got a pretty good shot within the next 3 to 5 years to really do something special under Mario.
He is missing some of the targets, but he remains optimistic about the offense.
Oh, another reception. This might go into the end zone. It does. Zaylen Wood, a pick six for Middle Tennessee. What is going on? 2 passing attempts, 2 interceptions. One of them finds its way into the end zone. Down here at the bottom of the screen, Cunningham has a receiver wide open. Hits him in stride inside the 30, and he stays on his feet. That's England Chisholm will score.
List everybody as a wide receiver, whether you're 6'5", 220, or you're 5'8", 190.
Just one of those 5'8", 190 guys, and he's making a lot of players miss. That's Jalen Lane, and he's got a lot of speed. Inside of Miami territory, inside the 30, inside the 20. Dragged down at the 5. Cunningham changing the play to his offensive line. Here come the Canes. He'll throw, and he'll go up top. Caught! England Chisholm for the second time today! Wow! A bomb to Chisholm. This one 98 yards. Wow! Cunningham from his own end zone. I can't believe it.
It's time to go around the state and find out what's happening on the college football gridiron with some of the best insiders in the state of Florida covering the Canes, Seminoles, and Gators. It's the Sports Talk 305 State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable with Manny Navarro from The Athletic, Ira Schofel from warchant.com, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Huddle up, Miami, Florida, and Florida State fans. Here's your host, Orlando Alzugari.
Good evening, college football fans all around the states. Good evening, gentlemen. Kevin, do you want to walk back that prediction?
Yeah, you had to do that to me, didn't you? I was thinking about that all week. Oh my goodness. That was something. I did say 3 to 5 years though, so give it time.
Yeah, you got the caveat right in there. 3 to 5 years. I didn't say 3 to 5 days from now. I said 3 to 5 years from now. Yes, exactly. I'm with you. No, we had to have a little fun with that. That's what we do for the next hour. We'll talk some college football. We'll talk about your favorite team, whether it's the Gators, whether it's the Seminoles, whether it's the Canes. That's why it's a round table. And we welcome the gentlemen aboard. Good evening, Kevin, Ira, and Manny. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. Appreciate it.
Thank
All
you.
right. Good stuff over the weekend for Florida State, obviously. The win over Boston College. Florida lost to Tennessee. And then Miami, we just saw the lowlights there, which is an amazing thing with Middle Tennessee, 45-31. Let's start off the round table. Let's start off with Florida State. They deserve the headline. They are the undefeated team. They defeat Boston College 44-14. And I got to tell you, Ira, you talked about this last week with Jordan Travis and his development and the West Palm Beach native, 321 yards this past week. You talked about his development. What I'd like to know is how and who. How has he developed? And who has helped him? Because while we were talking about Tyler Van Dyke one week, and we're talking about Richardson another week. Well, here comes Jordan Travis saying, no. I own the crown in the state as the best quarterback here. So talk to us. How and who has helped Jordan Travis make so much progress?
I think really the key to this whole thing was at some point midway through last season, because early last year they were debating, is it Mackenzie Milton, is it Jordan Travis, and what do they want to be on offense? And then midway through last season, they decided, you know what, Jordan Travis has to be our guy. He gives us the best chance to win. Let's pour everything into him. And I think they've really tailored the offense around him, made him feel like this is his offense. They put a lot of confidence in him. And I think that's a big thing. Him being the man this offseason, knowing he's the starting quarterback, it's the first time since he was in high school that he's had a team where they looked to him and said, you're our guy, lead us. And I think he really embraced that. And then from a coaching standpoint, I think both of their quarterbacks coaches, last year it was Kenny Dillingham. He was a huge believer in Jordan Travis. Even when Jordan Travis didn't believe in himself, Kenny Dillingham, who now is the offensive coordinator at Oregon, really bred a lot of confidence in him. And then they have a new quarterbacks coach, Tony Tokars, who I think has done a really good job as well. But I think the big thing is they put it all on him and said, you're our guy. And then they've tailored things to his skills, to what he feels comfortable with. And you're seeing the results. This is from an outside perspective. It feels a little bit different than what Miami has done with a new offensive coordinator and changing the system to something maybe Tyler Van Dyke didn't feel as comfortable with. That's just from the outside looking in. Yeah, that's a subject that Manny and I have kind of talked about the last couple of weeks. And by the way, what a concept. They believe in the kid. Damn, all last year I kept saying, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. This guy Flores hates Tua, didn't want to draft him, doesn't support him. Well, and look at now, they're supporting the kid. What a difference when you support human beings, man. I tell you, you give them a platform and you never know. Sky's the limit for all of us. Go ahead, man.
Well, Ira, just as a follow-up to Florida State, I mean, obviously, I told you last week, I said it on the show, that I thought Jordan Travis is really the biggest difference with this team. I mean, when you have a legitimate quarterback, it changes everything. But at the same time, you got to have receivers. And Florida State for a while there, I mean, that was a position that had just fallen off. And now, he's got playmakers all around, and the backfield is humming. Just talk about the way that they kind of put this team together, because I mean, so many transfers, but you got to find the right ones, and they did.
Yeah, they really did. You're right, 100%. And the thing last year was, even when they went to Jordan Travis as the guy, once teams like Clemson and a couple other teams really stacked the box and said, you've got to beat us through the air, he couldn't do it partly because he didn't have good weapons to throw to. Now they went out and got 4 wide receiver transfers. Really the key to it was Micah Pittman, who hasn't been the biggest productive one of the group. He transferred in from Oregon, but he unlocked the door for them to get Johnny Wilson from Arizona State. They were high school teammates in California. So when they got Micah Pittman, soon after that, Johnny Wilson went in the portal, and Florida State was able to get him as well. They also got the running back, Trey Benson from Oregon. I really feel like Micah Pittman was the key to those 3 additions. But it's changed everything for them, because now, they have guys that if you go man coverage, they have guys that can win some of those one-on-one battles. In the last few years, it has been anemic. Even when they tried to take shots downfield, they're throwing them to these 5'9", 5'10" guys with no catch radius. Now they've got 6'3", 6'4", 6'7". It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, Ontario Smith has actually done a nice job, right? He's made some plays, right?
Yeah, Ontario Wilson, Pokey Wilson. He's a guy who the last couple of years he kind of had to be the main guy, so he's getting everybody else's best corner. Now he's getting maybe your 2 or your 3 or your nickel, and he's having a chance to make plays.
Shit, he had a great game against LSU. Yeah. He played a nice game against LSU. All right, let's move over to Kevin. Kevin, it's kind of good news, bad news, I guess, because you lose to Tennessee, obviously, and it sucks. They drop out of the top 25 along with Miami. But Richardson does play well, man. 24-44, 453 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had an interception, lost a fumble. So it's that whole thing. I'm not exactly sure. Is Richardson's favorite song Helter Skelter, and is his favorite book Jekyll and Hyde? I just want to know. I mean, these are what inquiring minds want to know. So the positives and the negatives of this week. Kind of a little mixed bag for Florida.
Yeah, and I think, Billy Napier in his Monday press conference kind of compared it to like a rookie NFL quarterback, just going through the ups and downs of that, learning how to read defenses, learning different things. They put in a lot of work during the week with the wide receivers. They were a lot more in sync. Tennessee doesn't have the greatest pass defense in the world, and they really stacked up to stop the run. But you got to give Anthony credit for delivering the ball accurately. That was a big issue. And making plays downfield, 6 passes, 20 yards or more. I think coming into the game, he had 6 in the first 3 games. So connected on, with Justin Shorter on a couple of 39-yard passes, Ricky Pearsall. So certainly the offense was humming. The bad news was the defense could not stop the Vols and Josh Heupel and that high-powered offense. They made a couple of big plays early, had a few turnovers. Ventrell Miller, who basically played through the foot injury, made some impact plays. But as the game wore on, what was really the turning point was that 99-yard drive late in the second quarter. And then, to go up 17-14. And then to start the third quarter, Tennessee had the possession, scored another touchdown, and then you're up by two scores. And Florida played uphill for most of the game after that.
I was going to ask you, Kevin, one of the topics, and I know it's a topic for Manny down at UM, and it was a topic for Florida State for sure the last couple of years. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more later in the show about coaching security and head coaches and how much time you give them. I'm just kind of curious, in the locker room, do you get a sense that these players totally believe in what they're being asked to do? I know it's really early, but do you sense that they're coming together during this kind of some of these struggles, losing 2 games early in the season? Every time a new coaching staff comes in, it seems like players assume that it's going to turn around overnight, just like fans do, just like media do. Do you get the sense that the players, the way they competed, that's a good sign for where they're at?
Yeah, I think the way they finished and the fact that they didn't quit Ira goes into that. And I think offensively, I think they believe. I think defensively, I think right now what's happening defensively is you're seeing a lot of busted coverages, missed assignments, and I think it's hard for them to play fast because they're kind of thinking right now. And there's a little bit of a talent issue on the defensive side of the ball too as well. But I think also, it's still a situation where you're trying to get more repetitions under a new system that Patrick Toney is implementing. It's a creeper defense, comes from the Dave Aranda school where you're having, different guys, linebackers and defensive backs doing pressures and dropping DBs back. So it's still kind of a learning phase with that. And when you have a team that's a defense that's not overly talented to begin with, this is some of the kind of the growing pains that you're going to go through.
Kevin, just as a small follow-up, Richardson was also the leading rusher. And you normally you want to try to elevate your running game around a running quarterback, right? So you can mix up the defense a little bit. What does Florida have to do there? Because you don't really want Richardson being the leader in both. You'd like to have a little bit more versatility in that running game.
Yeah, but I think the first 3 weeks, Big O, you took like a Montrell Johnson, he had 100 yards the week before. So I think part of it was what Tennessee was taking away from them and in the read option and so forth. So I think that's going to open back up. I think the run opened up more for Richardson this week because they were taking some of the running backs away. So I think it's going to be a week-to-week thing. But they're going to be careful with Anthony, certainly with the injury history. But I think the main thing is the main takeaway that Florida fans have here is that he looked like he could beat you throwing the football. Anthony could in the future, which did not appear to be the case the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and he'll become even better if the running backs are also in a game like that one. Would have been nice to have a running back that was really complimenting him and punishing Tennessee and maybe giving them less chances also and less opportunities. All right, we move on. Manny, I'm sorry. It pains me as much as you do, my brother. We got to talk about this. And so a lot of things that the Canes are talking about, Canes fans, and you mentioned it with me this past week in the postgame show, the player malaise, the thing that's gone on with different coaches, right? And so the question I have for you is, and I started to do a little homework, right? And I said, okay, Manny's a first-year guy. Well, Dan Lanning's a first-year guy taking over for Manny, 13 in the country. He's 3-1 right now, wins against number 12 BYU. Washington State and Eastern Washington lost to Georgia badly. Brian Kelly's 3-1 at LSU. Now, New Mexico, Mississippi State, and the Southern Jags, not necessarily great wins all the way across, and lost to, of course, Irish O'Fell's FSU. Joey McGuire's 3-1 with Texas Tech right now. I look around, Mike Elko with Duke is 3-1 right now. Sonny Dykes is 3-0 with TCU right now. Lincoln Riley is 4-0 right now with USC. Now, it's Rice, Stanford, Fresno State, and Oregon State, so it is what it is. Brett Venables now taking over more of an established program, so that one's a little different. But you look around, there are coaches that have first-year titles and have done a decent job of that transition. What is going on for Mario? Why can't he get his players a little bit more in line and playing a little bit more, at least fundamental football? Let's put it that way, because that's what we haven't seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Mario's sort of encountering the same thing every other coach at Miami has when they take over, and that's resistance, right? Resistance in the locker room. How much buy-in do they have into whatever system you're going to implement? You know, when Al Golden came in and wanted to run sort of more of a 3-4 scheme and beef up guys like Anthony Chickalo and play him out of position, and have guys sitting 20 yards off the line of scrimmage when they were on the goal line. It was pretty hard to get players to buy in, right? I mean, those defensive players were angry. They were upset that they changed the system on them. I think the issue here is the offense and how much change, Josh Gaddis and Mario have implemented, being a run first, line up on 3rd and 1 and run the play everybody in the building is expecting, and not playing that fast pace. And so what happens is you don't get the buy-in from the players, right? You go on the road to Texas A&M, you leave a bunch of points on the field in that game, and you come back home, you got a couple of injuries, you got guys out, and now all of a sudden the quarterback has no confidence in the guys he has out there, and it just snowballs. And that's what happened against Middle Tennessee this past week. And I think ultimately here, this is a huge moment for Mario and this program, because they had a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail. Okay, they have one of the best recruiting classes in the country, and he's an excellent recruiter. I know he's going to do a good job recruiting here. The problem is, I'm really worried with the deficiencies they have on defense that this thing could implode quickly. And Middle Tennessee exposed the issues that they have at cornerback, getting rid of the ball quickly. They kind of put the blueprint out there for everybody else this year to beat Miami, just throw it over the top. I think I got worried earlier today, Tyreek Stevenson may not be back this season. He's their number 1 cornerback. So, I mean, this could get ugly quickly. And I think if they don't fix things on offense, and run a system that the players believe in, and are happy and excited to run, then I think they could really go in the other direction badly here.
Yeah, and by the way, saying number 1 corner on the University of Miami football team, that's like, I don't know, valedictorian of summer school or something. I don't know. It's just not something you really want to handle there. Go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
No, Manny, I'm just curious about, because you talked about the secondary and the number of big plays given up, and I saw some guys that just looked flat-footed. I mean, is the secondary that bad, or what could be done adjustment-wise to address some of what you were discussing in terms of just giving up so many big plays, in the passing game?
Well, I mean, Jamil Adai came here from Georgia, and he's a man-to-man cover guy. That's the system that he wants to implement here. I think Kevin Steele wants those guys to play in that sort of system. They didn't make any adjustments at halftime to go to zone after giving up some big plays in the first half. And I think the reality is kids like DJ Ivey, who've been starting here and playing here for a long time, they've shown it. They'll get beat over the top left and right. They did it against Bethune-Cookman. They did it the second week against Southern Miss. The problem for Texas A&M was they just didn't have a quarterback that could do that, and they didn't have too many healthy receivers. So that's why Miami looked so good against Texas A&M. But like I said, this is a problem that, I mean, they've got to figure this out some way or another, whether it's zone defense, whether it's just dropping 9 guys into – I don't know what they're going to do. But they can't keep playing this man-to-man defense with the guys that they have out there, because it's just going to happen every single week. Everybody in the ACC has 1 or 2 guys that can beat you deep, right? I mean, this is why you're in a Power 5 conference. You get 1 or 2 of those guys on each team at the minimum. And that's what's going to happen to Miami here the rest of the season. Teams are just going to try to throw it up, beat them deep, and they're probably going to have a lot of success.
My brother, North Carolina's next. I mean –
Drake May might be the best quarterback in the ACC, and those receivers are legitimate. So there you go.
Yeah, Mac Jones is just like licking his chops. He's going, well, I don't need Manny Diaz anymore to be around. I got the next guy in line. I mean, wow, because they can rack it up. I'm terrified of that game in 2 weeks. And speaking of that, the Miami Hurricanes are off this week. Florida taking on Eastern Washington. What is that like? Is that at Sandals, Kevin? Is that game at Sandals? Is that what it is? Is that where they're holding that game? Anyway, Wake Forest, by the way, that's a nice matchup against Florida State. So that one should be fun. We'll get into all of that in the final segment. We got some interesting topics we want to get into when we come back on the other side. One of them really affects all three teams in the state, and all the fans have experienced the same kind of thing. And I think it's a topic that I don't know if we're going to be able to resolve it or answer it, but it is complex, and we'll get into that right here on the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
All right, welcome back. There we are. Ira Schofel, Kevin Brockway, and Manny Navarro with you. All right, gentlemen, let's take our look around the college football scene. And this is a question that's kind of interesting because each one of you have covered this experience multiple times, actually. And it's not the perfect question, and it's kind of hard to actually even produce the perfect answer. How long is the right amount of time to give a coach to turn a college football program around? And we see it all the time. Coaches take over. Norville was a guy that didn't start off very well either, which is a little inspiration for Canes fans and the mess that's going on right now with Mario, but he's kind of righted the ship a little bit. But again, we've seen that before too, where the guy may start off a little hot or start off a little cold, and then things get awry. So whichever one of you guys wants to take a stab at this first, how long should we give a coach?
If I can jump in first, just because it does hit really close to home for Florida State, covering them, because they went through 2 coaching changes within about 18 months. With a friend of mine in the business, a friend of my former athlete who I talked to at one point, he said he believes that the right coach is the coach you're going to be your fan base is going to be willing to give enough time to get the job done. And if you're going to hire somebody that the fan base won't give time to, don't hire them, because if they're going to need time, you need to make sure it's somebody that they're going to be invested in and are going to be willing to give them some time. With Willie Taggart, the problem there was after about 12, 18 months, the inside the program, people were seeing, the administration and other people around the program felt like this is not going in the right direction. It wasn't necessarily about the wins and losses. Now, ultimately, that loss to Miami at home where they were embarrassed and it wasn't competitive, that was the end of the road for him. But it really was what was happening behind the scenes. So when Mike Norvell comes in right after that, and the record isn't any better, and you have fans and people on the outside media saying, hey, this guy's record's not any better after 2 years than Willie Taggart, what they were seeing behind the scenes was totally different. They felt like he was changing the culture. They felt like he had buy-in from the players, but it was just going to take some time, and they stuck with him. And now here we're seeing, in year 3, we're seeing positive results. So to me, on the one hand, you have to be willing to cut bait if you make a bad hire. They made a bad hire with Willie Taggart. There's a few reasons for that. It's not just him. It's what they let him do with his support staff and some other things. But they were smart to cut their losses, even though it cost them $18 million.
That's what I was going to say. Cut bait. No, cut a check, dude.
Yes, $18 million. It cost them a lot. That's why I never thought they would do it. I just thought that they would ride it out for a while. But when they did it, and then they got Mike Norvell, look, man, they kind of got lucky because it could have gone sideways with him, and now you're paying off 2 coaches. So, again, I think it's a tricky situation, and every situation is different. And I did want to say, I thought you were reading out those records from other coaches. I just think it's hard, man, because every program is completely different. And I think it seems very likely Mario has stepped into a tougher situation maybe than some of those other coaches.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, it's just a difficult situation, but it's hard to get a measure. And it all depends. You're right. It all depends on what you step into and where that program is. And at the same time, what kind of changes are you making? How drastic is it from the talent you currently have to what you want to accomplish, which becomes an even bigger hurdle. Gentlemen?
Well, I was going to add to that, obviously back in the day, it used to be 4 years, right? Everybody would get a chance to recruit 4 classes. I think nowadays with the transfer portal, that clock gets sped up. Now, obviously in Mario's case, in Miami's case, when you sign a 10-year, $80 million deal, you're not going anywhere anytime soon, right? And that's the one interesting thing in college football. As much as, it took Miami to make that kind of commitment to get Mario Cristobal to leave Oregon and come here, I also think, I don't know if colleges are going to continue to do this, right? The big contract to the Michigan State coach, right? Those kind of things where you really put yourself in a dangerous position if things don't work out. And so I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I agree with Ira. I think every situation is different depending on the school and what that coach inherits. But I would say with the transfer portal, things can change quickly. You can go into the transfer portal the way Mike Norvell has. He didn't have great recruiting classes, but he went in there and he got immediate difference makers, right? I mean, Manny Diaz had some success with the transfer portal here at Miami, which is why they were able to get Derek King and go 8-1 before that season in 2020 fell apart. So you can fix things quickly. The question is, how much patience does your fan base honestly have? And in Miami's case, this is the most money they've ever spent on a coaching staff, okay? Fully invested in ways that they never did before. I think, this is going to be a really interesting scenario to watch here the next couple of years because they do need fans to show up. And we know Miami fans only show up for winners. They only show up for big games. They're going to have to pay the bill eventually. So at some point here, if Mario doesn't get some quick results, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, there's going to – you and I have had this conversation, though. I always worry that they might pull some of the money that they're investing into this football program and spend less money on assistant coaches and staff and everything else.
By the way, and just a small follow-up for you, Manny, while I no one can argue Mario's a hell of a recruiter, maybe early on we can say, and you just mentioned it right now, Diaz has maybe gotten more out of the portal than he has.
Yeah.
Diaz
even
got
at
himself,
Oregon,
Diaz got himself,
he didn't really do it. So.
Yeah. Diaz got himself some studs in the portal is what actually saved his butt at times with some of the players that he got out of that portal that really helped him out. All right, Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I think, as fans, all you're entitled to is progress, right? So you want to see progression year to year. I think that's kind of the key with the coach. I saw Urban Meyer at Florida turn around in 2 years, year 2. I would say 2 to 3 years, you have a pretty good gauge if a program is going in the right direction or not. And at that point, you decide whether to pull it. I think Mark Richt at Miami, right? He had a very good second year. I think that's when it usually turns. Year 1 to year 2, you can kind of tell if the train is going in the right direction or not. And if said Mike Norvell, it's year 3, but you saw progress in year 2. So if you see consistent progress with a coach, I think that's kind of a gauge in terms of the amount of time or the amount of rope that you give them.
Well, the problem, and just
love that answer.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But going back to what Manny said also, and this is what's frustrating for those of us who are a little bit older, is that what Manny was talking about was you used to get the 4 years or 5 years. That was before the big time money. And now it's like everybody says, well, we're giving you all this money, fix it quicker. Well, that
the portal.
Well, you do have the portal. The portal is a big help. You're right. That is a game changer. And it has saved Mike Norvell, just like you said. It extended Manny's chances at Miami. But it does bother me that we feel like just because you throw more money at it, that it's going to solve it quicker. That doesn't necessarily always work.
I think we've all covered college football long enough to understand the importance of depth and the importance of building a program. And that could take a lot of recruiting classes, even more than 3 or 4. I think that's a huge problem. I mean, you take a look at Miami, right? Xavier Respeto, right, at the wide receiver. You alluded to the number 1 cornerback. Florida, losing Ventrell Miller, almost lost a game to USF. When you're a really thin team and you don't have time to build it the way you want to build it, it can really compound on you quickly. So I think you have to have a little luck too, but usually a couple of years you can kind of build that depth over time, either through the portal or through your recruiting classes to build a program. And that's the problem when you're facing programs like Alabama and Georgia. They have that built-in depth that's going to keep you from getting to the elite level until you build it yourself.
Gentlemen, there's another factor we are leaving out now to the fans is you're paying these players now. So now you're going to be judged just like a professional because Mr. Ruiz is paying DJ Ivey $90,000. That's not a good investment, by the way. I just want you to know that. So this is now, if you're the quarterback and you're making all this money on NIL and all that stuff, that's going to be another thing that's going to rush the process. Because what do you mean, dude? You're getting paid now. You're getting paid. You need to produce, and you're not producing. And that, I think the NIL stuff is also, it's not realistic because he's still a freshman. You know what I'm saying? The guy you recruited and brought him and give him all that money, he's still a freshman. So it doesn't matter what money you're giving him, but that's not the reality. They don't care about that. So they're going to critique these kind of kids that are also getting big on NIL money and they're not producing.
That's a great point.
I mean, it's out of control with that NIL stuff. All right, let's go to topic number 2. Texas Tech this week fined $50K. Fans rushing onto the field after a huge win, big time upset. One of the fans ends up shoving a player to the ground and everything. And by the way, kudos to the player. He handled it marvelously because he really could have crushed the kid if he wanted to. But I don't know how you answer this one, and I don't know, is it fair to fine the school? And at the same time, how do you control the impossible? That's what I see. What are you going to do? Build the wall of Montezuma around the whole damn field? I mean, that's the only way you're going to do it. You're going to have to build those tall fences that they build in Latin American soccer, countries because they don't want them getting onto the field. So they build fences that are like 30 feet tall. So how do you stop people from getting onto the field? Is this fair to Texas Tech?
Well, I saw this a lot in basketball, Big O, from covering Florida. And it can be a very scary situation when fans rush the court, and they did it quite often, back when I covered Gator basketball during the Billy Donovan era. And I just think you have to find a way. I mean, Florida, Jeremy Foley was kind of the forerunner of the idea of fining some of these schools. It presents a safety hazard. Trust me, it does. When kids can get trampled, there have been stories at the high school level even of kids getting paralyzed. It's a very scary thing. If you've been in that human wave, it's not people think it's fun, it looks good on TV, But with I think with a football crowd, it's a lot harder, obviously, because that's a huge mass of humanity, even compared to a basketball crowd. But you got to find a way, whether it's a tall wall or you just don't like to see the schools that really encourage it. And you see some of them that do. And it's usually the Texas Techs of the world beating Texas, right? Because a school like Texas or even a school like, Miami with the championship tradition, they've done it before. But you would like to see at least some of these schools kind of discourage that kind of behavior instead of encourage it.
Well, I was going to say that you don't have to worry about it happening at Miami because there's just not enough people in the stands really to make much of a difference. No, in all seriousness, I mean, look, I haven't been in too many situations where fans have sort of stormed the field. We do cover the ACC, Ira and I, and Clemson's the only one that's had any reason to celebrate the better part of the last few years. So I look, it's obviously scary, right, for the kids and what happened at Texas Tech with players shoving a fan down. Don't blame them. I think it could always end up being worse. And that's what I always think about is, man, what happens the day that these fans actually attack a player, right? Because it's one thing to just run on the field in celebration, but what if they get so angry they start wanting to fight with the players or something of that nature? Security just has to be beefed up. There has to be more people working, and I don't think there's enough security, in all honesty. I mean, I've been in a lot of stadiums, and you see a couple of security guards, right? You'll see a nice person standing there. Here's your seat. Sit there, sir. Man, please sit here. Reality is they're not going to stop anybody, right, from getting on the field after the game. So I think it's just the only way you do it is beef up security for the big games and hope that those people do their job.
Yeah, look, I see it both ways. On the one hand, I agree with you. Security is definitely the answer. I remember the Florida-Georgia games back when I was in college. We go to the Florida-Georgia game, and I remember one time a few fans ran out onto the field right at the end of the game, and these big state troopers hog-tied these dudes. They grabbed these students, hog-tied them, and put them on the middle of the field like a trophy, and like basically we're telling anybody, does anybody else want to come out here? And nobody else wanted to come on the field after that. So I think that is part of it. But also, man, I do like, and I get Kevin's point and both of your guys' points about the security and the safety. But I also like the passion, man, in those basketball games. When Leonard Hamilton first got to Florida State 20 years ago, they knocked off a couple ranked teams. And there was 2 or 3 court stormings that season. And it got to where we had the students sitting right behind us. And I would make deals with them right before the game was over. I would say, look, give me a second to get my bag and my computer out of the way. I'm going to turn my chair around so you can hop on that and then hop onto the press row and then jump on. Like I'm fine with you doing it. I just help me get out of the way. Right. And I thought it was a great scene. I think those scenes are awesome, but I also understand, and it's just, we've been fortunate that this thing with Texas Tech is probably the most serious thing that's happened. But I mean, yeah, man, something really bad could happen. So I get the idea. But man, I just harken back to like a simpler time when that was fun and safe and it was fun for everybody.
I think,
that's the problem, guys, that we're in a part in our society now where the freedoms that we all used to enjoy, we didn't abuse them.
Right.
And so unfortunately now we have too many people that abuse the same kind of freedoms. And instead of, think about it. Hank Aaron hits that home run, and there's a dude running with him to congratulate him. And he meant nothing. And in today's world, that would never happen because you would tackle that dude way before you ever got to Hank Aaron. Because unfortunately, we have Martina Hingis, and we have all these other things that have happened in the recent history now. And it's gotten even more out of control and more. And in colleges now, they have all these sororities, and what's that called? Those rush nights or whatever, when you've got to initiate them.
Right.
Now, back then it was harmless fun. Now they're doing things that are extreme, and that's become the problem now, is that the same freedoms that we used to enjoy when we were young, those freedoms have been abused, and then the authorities have to say, well, we can't allow the same freedoms anymore because people don't know how to really truly enjoy those freedoms. And so then somebody gets hurt instead of just celebrating in the moment. Right. I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, I was going to say, I don't know if there's a way to do this in college football, but I know in college basketball, there was usually a pretty good way to clear players and coaches off the court before the storming happened. And maybe if there's a way to even do that in college football too.
Oh, you're so far away from the locker room. You're so far away.
Yeah. God. And that's the thing. Like you can't get them back there so that there's not that interaction and that passionate interaction where you have a player interaction with a fan.
Anything else there, Ira? Manny, you're good?
Yeah, no, I just I guess the other thing about, and Manny mentioned Clemson. Clemson has a thing where they just come on the field. People always think they're storming the field. They're not storming the field. They allow their fans onto the field after every game. And I was there in 2013 when FSU blew them out. The national championship team with Jameis blew them out of their own stadium. And then after the game, they all came down to the field. And I was like, this is going to be bad because somebody's going to swing on one of the FSU players or something. But no, it was very peaceful and it was nice. And you just wish it could be like that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you can't trust. And then when somebody abuses it, and then you're irresponsible for allowing somebody to have those same freedoms, unfortunately. All right. One more. So this week, Tennessee and NC State ended up cracking the top 10. So who's more likely to stay in the top 10 this season? Tennessee or NC State or neither one? Go ahead, gentlemen.
Neither one.
I think I vote for neither one as well. I'm not convinced in either one of those teams just yet.
Yeah, and I think too with Tennessee, the pass defense is very suspect. That was exposed in the Florida game. I think Alabama, Georgia, they're not quite on that level yet, and LSU might even be able to beat them.
And then NC State's got Clemson this weekend, and then Florida State right after that. And look, man, if they can win those two games back to back, including, I just think that then they deserve to be there. But I just think I have a hard time believing they're going to win both of those games.
There you go. And don't forget, at 8 o'clock tonight, when we're done, Mike McCoy will take over with the Miami Hurricanes Watch. That is Ira Schofel from the War Chant, Manny Navarro from The Athletic, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. I'm Orlando Alzigari. You are listening and watching the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable right here on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
All righty, there we are. Final segment before we hand it off to the Hurricane Watch with Mike McCoy. All right, let's start off with Wake Forest and Florida State. Florida State favored by 7 in this one. The over and under is 66 points. Wake Forest plus 215 on the money line. Florida State minus 255 on the money line. And no, we're not asking Ira for gambling advice, but I figured you'd like to know the numbers there. Now, Ira, Wake is 3-1, but they've beaten Liberty, Vanderbilt, and the VMI Cadets. So are they good at football or are they good at push-ups? So talk to me a little bit there about Wake Forest.
They're really good on offense. I mean, it's pretty much the continuation of what we saw last year where they were one of the best offenses in the country. It's a maddening offense when you look at their running game and the stuff that they do, that slow mesh RPO where it looks like it's in slow motion. They hold the ball. The quarterback, Sam Hartman, holds the ball with the running back for 2, 3, 4 seconds while they're waiting for the defensive line to get out of their gaps. Then he might hand it off and let somebody go, or he'll take a shot down the field. They hit a bunch of – Clemson basically said, we're going to disrupt your slow mesh and we're going to challenge you to make plays through the air. And Wake Forest did it. Sam Hartman threw 6 touchdowns. He torched Clemson's secondary. They looked awful. Late in the game, what was kind of the difference for Clemson was they started playing 2 safeties back, made Wake Forest run the ball. They did, but they couldn't do it consistently enough. Clemson wins it in overtime, but it was a great game. Wake is great on offense. They're not very good on defense. So I think it's going to be a track meet. I think Florida State's offense is going to do really well against Wake's defense. I think Wake's offense is going to do really well against Florida State's defense. And I think it's going to come down to maybe who gets a couple of stops. That's why that total, as you said, is in the 60s, because I don't think Vegas is not expecting a lot of defensive stops in this football game.
I mean, Hartman is 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So the kid's also a smart quarterback. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And listen, he also is experienced. And you know what? The moments aren't big for him. And that's pretty cool. You can see it when he plays.
Yeah, man, he's a competitor too, because Clemson hit him a bunch in that game. Yeah. They were getting frustrated. They were teeing off on him, and he just got up and kept playing. He's been in the system for 4 or 5 years now. It seems like 10 years. So he knows that offense like the back of his hand. And they're also sneaky athletic at receiver. Like, you don't think of Wake Forest as having great athletes. They came into Florida and got a kid named A.T. Perry, who I don't think any of the big 3 wanted. And he goes up there and he's a superstar at Wake Forest. They've got a couple other really talented wide receivers. They're not getting the 5-star guys, but they're doing a great job of evaluating those mid-tier guys and then those guys have a chip on their shoulder when they come back to Tallahassee to play. So, man, it's going to be a great challenge for Florida State's defense.
And remember, they get smart kids, too, because you actually got to – not for nothing, but they're hitting the books there at Wake Forest. Okay, just sorry. Just going to say it. I mean, but no, it helps when you have kids that are also willing, to understand where they are, what limitations they may have. Those are the most coachable kids that there are out there. Any key injuries in this game that FSU fans should be,
great in this particular matchup. They've been pretty banged up on the defensive line. They've been without Fabian Lovett, their best defensive tackle, for the last couple of weeks. He got hurt in the opener. They've also been Derek McClendon, one of their defensive ends, went out in the last game. Jared Verse, their best defensive end, went out in the game before that. So those 3 guys, it's 3 of your starting defensive linemen who are questionable. Mike Norvell doesn't give a lot of injury information. We probably won't know for sure until game time if they've got – my guess is they'll have maybe the ends back. I don't know if they'll have Fabian Lovett back, a defensive tackle. But they need those guys. They've got some depth on the defensive line, but you need to be able to create some disruption in that mesh and force the issue a little bit. Clemson had some success with that, and Florida State needs those guys to get back. Otherwise, their cornerback, Amarian Cooper, has been banged up, but he came back and played well in that game Saturday. They've got a couple other guys here and there, but otherwise, I think they're in pretty good shape physically.
Not that you make a sports investment in any of this, but are you as cocky as Vegas is, -7? Do you like FSU that boldly for this game at home?
That number's a little higher than I expected. I thought it would be 4. I think it opened maybe at 4 or 5 at first, and that's where I expected it to be. I do like Florida State to win this game. I mean, I think here's the thing: all the other factors I think weigh towards Florida State. Florida State last week played Boston College. They got to rest a bunch of guys in the second half. Wake Forest went toe-to-toe to double overtime with Clemson in a very physical game. Now they have to turn around and go on the road less than 7 days later. Plus, Dave Clawson, their coach, said today that his team was gutted. That was his word about the way they lost that game. So now they got to get back up emotionally. I also think the fact that Jordan Travis and this offense will get to play at home. Wake Forest last week against Clemson, they were at home. Now they have to come on the road, and it's harder to play offense on the road. So I think all of those things point to Florida State. But, look, man, Wake Forest beat them by 3 touchdowns last year. So it would not surprise me if it was a very close game.
Well, they'll remember it, that's for sure. All right, we move on, Kevin. Your game has been moved to Sunday. And, folks, before I continue, please, wherever you're at around the state, please prepare, okay? And please be careful. And for all of our friends on the West Coast and through Central Florida and up into the Panhandle, this thing is going to affect all of us one way. And even Manny and myself down here in South Florida, we're going to get our share of rain and wind. So please be careful, have your supplies, and be kind to each other while you're out there. All right, so Sunday, your game is moved to noon at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, sir. Is this a bye week, right? Eastern Washington. Is this like serious? Is this like a real game or a virtual thing is what you guys are doing, right? Is that what's going on here? No, seriously.
This is one of those SEC FCS opponents, right? That they all, this is the byproduct of playing the 8-game schedule, which maybe someday they'll play the 9-game schedule. I was in the Big Ten the previous 3 years and they did it. And they used to complain about the SEC or other conferences that don't play a 9-game schedule. But this will present an opportunity, hopefully, to ramp up for, this is certainly the softer part of, your schedule. But then again, you thought USF was a game that was going to be a cakewalk, and it didn't turn out to be that way. So I think this will be an interesting test for Florida to see if they can come out with a sense of urgency. The routine is already disrupted. They do have this immaculate practice facility where they're going to be able to, practice indoors through the rain and so forth and everything like that. So, I still think that's going to be the interesting aspect of it, just to see their routine a little bit shaken off. Can they come out with a sense of urgency? There's not going to be many fans, I'm guessing, at the Swamp, given the situation and so forth. And
they're literally going to be playing in a swamp. Yeah, exactly.
They could. You never know. Yeah. Well, that field drains pretty good. But, just to come out, this is an Eastern Washington team that did lose to Oregon. I think I'm looking up at the score here, 70-14. So this should be a team that Florida should take care of. But they certainly have Eastern Washington. They've got a pretty good tradition at the FCS level in terms of, being competitive and winning championships. But this is big boy football, and you would hope that Florida could put the pedal to the metal and, play a lot of second and third team guys in the second half.
Yeah, because I wonder, and look, the University of Miami wasn't even ready to upgrade their, week schedule at the beginning. For them, at least, they're still in transition. But I would think the Miamis and the Floridas, I think when you're a big school, I think you want to start to improve those kind of matchups and play something that prepares you a little better for your conference schedule. What do you feel is the overall philosophy? Would they rather treat these games like a preseason game, or do you think deep down inside they'd rather play a little better competition that's a little closer to what they normally play in their own conference?
Yeah, I think Scott Strickland really, to his credit, the last few years has really tried to beef up the non-conference, because it used to be the excuse was, you played FSU every year and that was your one big non-conference game. But this year they added Utah to the schedule, which turned out to be a really big win, a nice kickoff to the Billy Napier era. They're going to go there next year and face them. I think they've got Notre Dame on the schedule in the future. They've got UCF on the schedule in the future. So they've upgraded it a little bit to where you're going to have 2 of those tests. And if the SEC ever gets to a 9-game schedule, which I think it should, if for no other reason, for television inventory, I think that's worked very well for the Big Ten. Then you'll have a really beefier schedule, which is going to be more important as the college football playoff expands too, because strength of schedule is going to be one of those components when you're talking about, ranking those teams.
That's right. And a ninth game, as Gordon Gekko would say, greed is good. All right, we move on to the Miami Hurricanes. Manny, Cristobal, boy, you're pissed off like that when your dog dies. He was pissed off at that podium. It's like, I don't think I want to be anywhere near Mario Cristobal right now. So obviously changes are a brewing. Changes are a coming. what are you expecting when it comes to changes?
Well, I think number one, all eyes will obviously be on the quarterback, right? Because I think at this point, if you make the switch from Tyler Van Dyke to Jake Garcia, you pretty much guarantee that Tyler Van Dyke's probably hitting the transfer portal and going somewhere else. So that's the number one storyline, I think, going into next week when we're actually allowed to go to Coral Gables and talk to people again. As far as defense, I mean, I'm hoping that we see a lot less man-to-man. If you're a Miami fan, after seeing what Middle Tennessee did to them, obviously Kevin Steele's going to have to make some adjustments because, as I said earlier, every team that watches that tape knows now, hey, yes, Miami's got some guys that can rush the passer. They did a good job getting Akeem Mesidor out of West Virginia to come here and through the transfer portal. They did a good job, beefing up 5 defensive linemen they brought in through the portal. But you can negate that pretty quickly if you run the kind of offense Middle Tennessee State does, which is spreading the field. And that's what UNC does. They spread the field. That's Miami's next opponent, right? And they let Drake May eat in space. They let him just throw the ball to his receivers, and they devour teams whole. And so I think there's going to have to be some significant changes on the defensive side of the ball just from a strategy standpoint. I know Jamil Adai, as I said, likes to play that man-to-man, but you can't do that with the cornerbacks that they've got right now. And then I think, offensively, what do you do once you pick a quarterback? Do you change, your philosophy in any way, shape, or form? Because clearly these players didn't buy in last week the way that they needed to. And you need to do something to kind of make them happy, make them, want to play in this offense and show the kind of effort they need to show every single week. So a lot of issues. I'm expecting some changes on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it looks a little bit on offense like square peg and round hole at times. All right, I'm going to get a little extreme on you in the comparison, but because this is a nutty world and they get nutty really quickly, and you see, it took only 6 quarters to boo Mario Cristobal. For those of you that don't know, it wasn't this game.
I was taking count.
It was the last game. 6 quarters in, they were already booing him. So after last week's game, which is easily one of the 5 worst games in the history, I'm going to be 56 on Saturday. And I've been watching the Canes since I was a child, going to the Orange Bowl in the 70s when there wasn't a lot of people there. Okay. But it was great. I could roll up $3 and give it to somebody at the door and I'd walk right in. I mean, what do you want me to do, bro? The Orange Bowl was like that. I walked into the 79 Super Bowl with 5 rolled up dollars, just so you know that. Anyway, so as I digress, I owe the Orange Bowl a couple bucks in ticket money. Anyway,
you ain't the only one.
Yeah, I know.
You ain't the only one.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that game and it's a disaster. It is you got thumped and dominated by Middle Tennessee State. You got manhandled by them. And I'm thinking Jimmy Johnson, 84. He finishes the season 8-5. Yeah. He has the Frank Reich comeback at 42-10. I looked it up now. I looked up all the information. By the way, for you UM fans, back in the day, 31,000 in that game. You weren't packing it in either. Anyway, so they lose to Boston College right after that. Hail Flutie. And then January 1st, they get thumped by UCLA, and Steve Bono, by the way, was the quarterback, if anybody remembers that. A Chiefs fan out there remembers Steve Bono, and San Francisco, by the way. He was there too. So by the end of that season, that was Jimmy's first year. And everybody was like, they were writing, Miami News was still in business, the Herald, the Sentinel, and they were all writing articles like, who is this guy from Oklahoma State, this, that, all that. And Jimmy was an unknown compared to Mario, who's a known. But it was that watershed moment for him, okay? Is that kind of building up for Mario in a way at the same time? Like, people are wondering, like, is it the right guy, or are they still reserved around them and saying, okay, no, he'll figure this thing out?
Well, I mean, I think you talk to people in Miami's administration, I think certainly there's a lot of apprehension, right? Because this wasn't supposed to happen anymore. They're not supposed to lose to these kind of teams anymore, at home nonetheless. And so I think there is, some real concern on that part with the amount of money that they're spending. But I think once we all realize that, part of the issue at Miami at its core is recruiting, right, and getting the right kind of players in the building, and not guys who are sort of selfish or just thinking about themselves. Once Mario is able to get his guys in the building, the guys that he knows, and he goes out there and recruits, I think things will start to change. I think the issue is it's going to be a while. And I think Miami fans, we all just assumed because Tyler Van Dyke was back and that this offense had as much success as they did over its last 6 games, that, okay, better coach, more coaches, right? More experienced coaches. They're just going to come in and change things. And I think we all forgot that really, when you go back and you observe the last 3 years of Canes football, pretty bad outside of when De'Aaron King came to life and pretty bad outside of when Tyler Van Dyke came to life. They've basically ridden a hot quarterback to all of their success the last 2+ seasons. And so I think, this is a very interesting time. I think if you're a Miami fan, you hope Mario Cristobal's way prevails and he gets the players in here that he needs that are going to operate the way he wants them to operate instead of showing the resistance they showed last Saturday.
Hell of a job for Mario, man. He's got a lot of work ahead. That is Manny Navarro from The Athletic, Ira Schofel from warchant.com, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Sean Stanley, by the way, Chad Show producing this program. Coming up, it's Mike McCoy and the Miami Hurricanes Watch. We thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the platform. If you missed portions of this program, you can rewind and check it out. Or, of course, you can check out the podcast after Sean and Chad post it. This has been the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You've been listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. This program is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Show. Make sure to subscribe to the Big O Radio Show on all platforms. Thank you for supporting us.